Amir, hi, and thank you so much for joining Faces of Digital Health for a discussion about biotech and AI, biotech and digital health. The two fields are converging a lot. They also differ a lot. I guess biotech is much more science-based, and you, as someone who's working very closely with pharma clients and with medtech companies as an advisor, as an expert, you know the trends. You are aware what's happening in the field. So I'm looking forward to your insights.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you.
I obviously need to start with AI because biotech is actually among the areas that have been in the AI space for the longest. And what I'm wondering as a warm-up question is, what are some of the groundbreaking things in 2023 that you saw?
I see personally two trends of the use of artificial intelligence in biotech and pharma. The first one has to do with the drug development process. We know that it takes sometimes 8 to 10 years to bring drug to market. It's a really, really long time, especially when there are terminal diseases and people die and they wait for the drug. And most often than not, the drug is not getting approved. So a lot of those investments actually doesn't actually go very well. This is the third category of AI that I mentioned before, the one that is very advanced, that can do things with deep learning and algorithms beyond human capacity. There is a huge trend in the industry now to develop drugs not based on actual experiment in laboratories, but based on deep learning, machine learning, even the chemical ingredients and the pharmacokinetic of the drugs is being curated by an algorithm, by AI. We can shorten the time to deliver drug to market by almost half. And the investment is not going to be that, it's going to be much cheaper and much faster to bring the drug to market. And that is a huge trend that if it's really going to be adopted, we will see a huge difference. I don't know if we're going to see it, honestly, in 2024, but it's building up. And I know of at least several big pharma companies, including Pfizer, for example, that are using those techniques of advanced AI to develop new drugs and test them, which means from the algorithm right away to phase 1 or phase 2. You don't actually have to go through the laboratory to in vitro, in vivo, animal, and all this kind of process we usually see. That's a huge trend, and I'm really curious what the future stores for us when it comes to something like that.
I was just reading earlier that basically maybe it's limited to oncology, but less than 4% of the drugs that enter phase 1 clinical trials ever get approved in the end. So that's like 96% of the drugs don't make it past phase 1.
Right.
So I think that's quite a significant number.
It is, and that's a really good segue for maybe talking about another trend of using AI in the pharmaceutical industry. And this has nothing to do with the process of drug development, but this has to do with the actual measurements that we take in a clinical trial to prove that to determine if the drug is effective or not, if the treatment group is significantly better than the control group. You mentioned a high percentage of clinical trials fail. One reason could be the drug, the compound is not working, right? The mechanism of action sucks. It doesn't work. So we have to rethink. But there is also a very good possibility in some cases that the drug is actually perfectly fine. The measurements suck. We are looking to measure an improvement in someone's health, but the resolution and the tools that we use to measure it are not good enough. Sometimes we measure it, for example, only at the hospital. We bring the patients to the hospital and we assume, say, this is like a 12 months clinical trial. The patients come at baseline 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. So what you get eventually is snapshots of what the patient is feeling, whatever you measure in the clinic, it doesn't matter. But think about it. The real health conditions of a patient is not a snapshot. It's a continuous, and there are a lot of changes that happen between those study visits, between baseline to 3 months, between 3 months to 6 months. We're not there. We're not there to measure if actually something good happened. I've seen many trials where patients come to the clinic and he had like a really bad day, or he didn't sleep well the night before, and that affects a lot of the measurements, and you get biased measurements that are not representative of what the patient is really feeling. If we were home with the patients, where most of the health changes actually occur, and we were there using wearable devices, using passive sensors, using clinical surveillance technology at the home environment, including even smartphones and mobile apps that can measure voice and motion and video and a lot of things that can be analyzed by artificial intelligence. When you deal with the data that is captured in the clinic, between us, this is not a very complicated data. Say you came to the clinic to draw blood or to get an MRI. I mean, it's very straightforward. You get the results. But when you deal with data that is continuously measured throughout the 12 months period of the trial, you get to that niche of AI that is beyond the human ability to analyze. You get to a huge amount of data, and even if you look at the data, you are like, what the heck? I don't know what to do with it. I need an algorithm. I need something. I need a seeing eye dog to help me because I get blind by seeing so many numbers. And this is where AI can help with analyzing continuous data or more frequent data. It doesn't have to be continuous. That is collected in clinical trials, not just during the traditional study visits. What that data is going to do, it will increase the power to the point that you don't need so many patients in a clinical trials to show a significant difference between the treatment group and the control group, because you have almost 100 times more data point. If you don't need so many patients, it means the time that takes to do the trial is much shorter. Maybe the budget is obviously lower, but most importantly, you get the resolution that you need in order to capture changes in somebody's health. I can give you an example if you want from oncology. I'll ask you a question, actually, if that's okay. From your knowledge, in oncology trials, and oncology is not my field, I'm in the neuromuscular rare disease, but in oncology trials, what is the most common primary endpoint in a clinical trial that we measure?
I actually don't know.
You don't know?
No.
If you know. So there are usually two that are most common, very intuitive. One is tumor size, right? We give one group of patients a drug, the other one gets placebo. We measure the tumor size. If the tumor is shrunk, it's generally a good thing, right, in medicine. The other thing, we measure survival. Those people tend to die. If our drug can give them, 18 more months of life, maybe for you and me it's nothing, but for them these are 18 more months of memories with their families, and that could be important, and drugs get approved for that. The point that I'm trying to make is that there are so many oncology trials where the drug was approved because the clinical trial results show that the tumor was much smaller in the treatment group. But at the end of the day, if you ask the patients, how do you feel? How do you feel? They say, not good. I feel like my life is in hell. I still have no energy. I don't want to get out of the house. My fatigue level is incredible. I have headaches. Yes, The tumor has shrunk, but the patient doesn't feel good. So I'm asking FDA in this case, what is really the whole idea of a clinical trial? Is it to prove that the drug is effective, that the mechanism of action is working? Okay, if that's the goal, yes, that's perfect. But that's not the goal. The goal is to prove that the treatment is effective. It doesn't matter if the clinical trial met the primary endpoint. It matters at the end of the day how the patient feels. How does that have to do with AI? It has to do with all these measurements that I was referring before, with wearable devices, for example, with smartphone apps that you can measure continuously at home. Without those measurements, you will not know if the patient is actually feeling good or bad.
Yeah.
If you just ask the patient, sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that there's definitely been a lot of progress made in terms of the patient-reported outcomes, how you actually collect them, and while the survival rate for many cancers hasn't really improved, like the quality of life with new drugs has, and that's basically the biggest impact that I've seen in drug development. So the quality of life of patients that improve. So it's not just about survival, it's also about actually having a life, as you kind of were describing.
Exactly. And you're absolutely right. And I'm so glad you correct me on this. The fact that we should focus on quality of life, that's not the innovative part. That FDA is aware of that. The innovative part is patient-reported outcome, subjective reports of patient being asked by a questionnaire. How did you feel over the last 2 weeks? And I need to think, how did I feel over the last 2 weeks? And I rated, okay, 7 here, from 0 to 10, I put 5. I mean, this is not a quantitative, objective measure of health. This is a very subjective evaluation of sick patients is given some rating. People have very different pain threshold and a lot of biases, right? It's almost embarrassing to me that in 2024 we decide whether a drug is effective or not simply based on these subjective measurements. Whether you have equipment with sensors that you can measure fatigue in a very precise way, in a very objective way, that, in my opinion, is the innovative part that we need to see more in clinical trials. I see trend. I see pharma companies are deploying more and more measurements like that, continuous, more frequent measurements that needs AI and machine learning to be analyzed in order to make those patient-reported outcome stronger, and we can build trust in those measurements as opposed to just subjective questions.
Mm-hmm. So you talked a lot about, innovative approaches to measuring various patient data related to treatments. And we've been talking about remote or virtual or at-home clinical trials for years. And what you were describing is the regular setting in the hospital. So what I really wonder is, how much do you see that, virtual clinical trials are already used? Because I still am hearing a lot of the same problems in drug development, in clinical trial design, in patient recruitment, and challenges related to that.
Right. I think that the concept of virtual clinical trials, decentralized clinical trials.
Thanks. Yeah, I was looking for that term.
Yeah. People have, I think, used that too much of a buzzword. To be honest, every clinical trial should have decentralized elements, should include more data that is being collected virtually at the home environment in order to capture the reality of the patients and not just snapshot in the clinic. Yes, there are a lot of advantages to do remote clinical trial or decentralized, but I'm not suggesting that drug trials should be completely virtual. I mean, there are things that, you cannot ship an MRI machine to the home environment, right? You will not send somebody to do muscle biopsy at the home. There are things that needs to be at the hospital. Sometimes the drug delivery itself needs to be at the hospital. So decentralization is more of a mindset that should be adopted by pharmaceutical companies when they design the protocol to enrich the measurement and include more measurement at home and allow patients, if possible, to do things remotely without bringing them to the clinic if it's absolutely unnecessary. That's at least my perspective on the decentralized trial.
Mm-hmm. If you look at the convergence of digital health and pharma more broadly, I still remember in 2015-16, here in Europe, like in Germany, there were so many accelerators after basically Bayer's grants for apps was established. It seemed that every pharma company wanted to have an accelerator, and it also wasn't quite clear what exactly do they want to do with digital health apps. So they supported some companies, and then in the following years, some accelerators became more targeted, and the pharma companies chose specific areas that they were researching and were looking for startups that were developing specific solutions for those therapeutic areas. So where do you see that, pharma is today in relation to digital health?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting perspective that you bring. You're absolutely right. The digital health surged around this time in 2014, 2015, 2016, and a lot of pharmas. It was almost like a mini pandemic of digital health, if you want, to the point that I think it was done in many ways without much strategy. That resulted in a lot of companies developing accelerators, developing shark tanks, developing Center for Excellence in Digital Health. It became to the point that a lot of big pharma had so many people with digital in their titles that within the company, they didn't know what the other person is doing. Like there was so many duplicative efforts and inefficiencies, and the need to digitize the way pharma behaves, that becomes like almost a mission, but the strategy was not there. And that resulted in a lot of crashes. We saw many crashes in Novartis a couple of years ago, recently at Biogen, Pfizer shutting down some of those big kingdom that they build for digital health. And now they're scaling down after realizing, you know what, maybe we need to strategize this a little bit better and see what works and what doesn't work and how we use our resources more thoughtfully. That's at least my perspective, seeing, I might be wrong, but that's what I'm seeing around me. I see much smaller group of digital health, but the trend is still there. And it's very strong, and people understand the return of investment and see the importance, but they scale it down and focus more on strategy and understanding what is it really going to bring us. Yes, we can develop an app that will be a companion app for this new drug. Before that, people do it because it was sexy, it was attractive,
Mm-hmm.
it was cool, it was new. Maybe even it could increase adherence, and patients would want to use the Pfizer drug because it comes with an app, and they will, prefer that over a drug from Bayer. But now, when having an app is, if in 2015 you had an app, it was like a big thing. You had it on your phone. Wow. Now, in elementary schools, boy can develop an app in 5 minutes during school break, and it's not a big deal. So I think pharmaceutical industry realized that the technology is there, but without the stickiness, without engagement engagement properties that are built in very wisely into those apps, patients will download them but will not use them. And without analytical, very, very sophisticated analytical infrastructures that needs to be in the back end to analyze the data that is collected by those apps. If you don't have that, you basically build a house without foundation. And this is where I see a lot of people coming back to this sort of smaller team strategy, in a way, learning from their own mistakes.
What are some of the things that you found perhaps inspiring or good use cases in terms of the digital health strategies that you see in pharma? Because I think like the whole fact that pharma is scaling down with the examples that you mentioned. So Biogen closed their digital health section last year in 2023. We had also various other examples of pharma supporting digital health companies that either went bankrupt or just, somebody pulled the plug. That's kind of discouraging for the digital health industry because the demands for clinical trials, for evidence that you need for something digital to be approved is rising. And the money that you need to actually bring all that together is really hard to get. And pharma is an industry that actually has that capital to be able to support endeavors such as, data gathering and clinical trials, on top of having a lot of experiences in how do you actually conduct a clinical trial that a startup might not even have. So
Right.
what do you see that the whole kind of boiling down of the excitement, let's call it like that, will do to digital health?
I see it very differently. I don't think that there is a lack of interest or some sort of something that impede on this excitement and mission. The scaling down does not reflect the lack of interest or importance. It simply means, in my opinion, efficiency. I'm in touch with many pharmaceutical companies and a lot of biotech companies that I'm sorry, not biotech, but let me say it again. I'm in touch with a lot of pharmaceutical companies that I'm either advising to or sometimes have advisory board position with tech companies that sell to pharma. I don't see anything close to lack of interest. What I see is that they have smaller teams that are more strategically moving the needle in order to make it right. Biogen shutting down the neuroscience, Biogen shutting down the digital health does not reflect, in my opinion, any trend in the industry, because I see so many clinical trials, in fact, deploying digital health technologies. I see FDA, I remember when in 2015, I remember FDA questioned a study protocol that in neuromuscular disease that included a wearable device to measure stride lengths and stride velocity to see if it's a neurodegenerative disease. It was Duchenne muscular dystrophy. FDA questioned, why? What the heck? Why do we need it? Now, in 2024, 2023, if you design a study for Duchenne muscular dystrophy and you want to measure disease progression and you do not include a wearable device, FDA will question you. So I think even at the regulatory level, we see so many guidelines. Yes, sometimes those guidelines are a little vague and there's some confusion, and we do fly the plane as we build it. There's a lot of learning, but I really think this is more efficiencies and not a reflection of the field being going the wrong direction. Digital therapeutics is a totally different area. If you referred before to bankrupt or a company that had to shut down, like Pear Therapeutic, that is a different category. digital therapeutics has its own opportunities and challenges. But if we just talk about digital health technologies in healthcare or in clinical trials and the use of AI, I see it booming and not wilting.
Yeah, I was just thinking that maybe the general expectation, is too high in terms of how many solutions need to succeed, which brings us back to those less than 4% of drugs that actually, go from and being eligible to start the phase 1 clinical trial and actually getting the FDA approval. Maybe we just have to expect similar metrics in digital health.
You asked a really important question before. What trends do I see in this new with these new smaller teams of digital health across the industry? And I can tell you what I see. Part of it is what I try to bring to a pharmaceutical team when I talk to them and I being a thought partner to help them decide how to improve the digital measurements in their trial to improve an increased likelihood to prove efficacy in the trial. The first trend, people in the digital health industry are collaborating across the pharmaceutical industry, share knowledge in a non-competitive fashion. I've personally participated in several forums like that last year, where you see people coming from all the pharmaceutical companies sitting together and talk about what failed and why. And they want that these lessons were learned so we don't burden patients again. We don't share the secrets of how to develop the compound of the drug. This remains completely separate, but we do share a lot about the methods, the analytical methods, the digital technologies, the logistic, how to deploy it. I see a huge trend about companies not being afraid to share what didn't work. That's one thing that I see. The other thing that I see, and maybe I don't see it much, but I'd like to see, this has to do with airplanes and long runways. So, we talked about how it takes about almost 10 years to bring drug to market. That's a long run. It means that somebody at the company leadership is willing to put his hand deep in the pocket, commit to a huge budget, a long-term view. And we know that sometimes there are fails. The experiments don't go as well. And during this 10-year period, we expect to fail several times, but eventually we'll make it. My experience with digital health is that the leadership in the pharmaceutical industry, the executive leadership, they don't have such patience for digital health solutions. They don't have long runway. They can give you a year or 2 years. Show me that it works. If it doesn't work, okay, budget is cut, goodbye. And I think this is something that I'd like to see being changed so that those leadership understand that it takes several more years to pilot something from a proof of concept until you get the results you need. It's not always off-the-shelf wearable that you just put and you get what you want. If they will be more patient and will give us will give the digital health community the same treatment that they give to the clinical pharmacologists who develop the drug, and let us make mistakes in a way, and not shut down the program or the budget prematurely. That would be a really smart strategic move. And the way to do it, at least the way I recommend pharma companies to do it, you have a phase 0, you have a phase 1. These are amazing opportunities to piggyback on those opportunities to pilot some of your digital health solutions. Say you have an app that measures cognitive function and you have a clinical trial in Alzheimer's. You don't know how this app that measures cognitive function is going to work. Is it going to be validated? Will you use it in phase 3? Okay, don't wait to phase 3. Use it in the very early phases to pilot it. So you have an opportunity to fix things, to change things, to build trust in that product, so that when it graduates to that phase 3 trial, phase 4, you have a digital solution that really went through the process of validation, and you get what you want, or no. You have an opportunity to have a go, no-go decision. If it doesn't give you what you want, you don't spend money and patient burden on a solution that doesn't work. Then it doesn't go into the clinical trial. But those opportunities exist there within pharma. And I think, again, if you think about this more strategically, how to utilize the resources, I think digital health teams can be smarter, more efficient, and get eventually better results.
What are your thoughts about the progress made in precision medicine? That's something that pharma loves to talk about, at least based on the extent that I am following it. This very optimistic picture of having really effective drugs that are targeting specific solutions. And we already also see concrete examples where even with gene therapies, you can actually cure diseases that were incurable before. The price tag is a different topic, but if we stick with the optimism or the biggest hope that you see, what kind of inspires you most in terms of progress that's been made in precision medicine?
That's a great question. Two things inspire me, or I would say I look forward to see how it evolves. I'm really curious to see. One has to do with the actual development of the drug. The fact that you and I may have the same disease, but the AI algorithm will curate a different drug for each of us. Remember, even drugs that are approved by FDA, they are based on results of a clinical trial. Not every patient in the clinical trial behave the same. There are significant amount of patients in the clinical trial that drug didn't actually work on them. It's just that the majority of the patients, it worked, so that's why the drug is approved. But AI can benefit us by answering the question of why it didn't work for those individuals in the clinical trials. What do we need to change in the formula of this drug to make it workable for everybody, so it's effective? And that curation in the individualized precision medicine, this is something that I'm super excited about, and hopefully that will, maybe not in my lifetime, but maybe a little later. The other thing that I'm really excited about precision medicine is not just about the drug itself, but the way it is administered and the holistic view of managing yourself and manage your disease. This is what I meant by, remember the example I gave you with, you wanted to bake a cake to celebrate this interview. And then Siri gives you recommendations that are far beyond the recipe. And it also gives you example of, maybe you want to modify the recipe because you have diabetes. Maybe you want to go to the supermarket by foot because you need the exercise because maybe you were a little overweight. So AI that guides you in every aspect of your life in real time and give you feedback can really help you live better, make smarter choices, and you almost have like a virtual friends that guide you, invisible friend that guide you how to manage your life and manage your disease in a much better way, and it's completely individualized. It goes back to the 101 principle of medicine. Do not treat the disease, treat the patient. It's not about just getting, somebody the drug. It's about how this drug interact with the rest of this person's life.
Yeah. What do you anticipate most in 2024 and beyond in terms of the future development of biotech and medtech?
Biotech and medtech, pharma and medtech are very different worlds. That's what I can tell you. Pharma is slow. They have a lot of SOPs. They are risk averse. They're all about innovation as long as you don't change it. But medtech is fast, is agile, is sometimes overselling. They want to look for shortcut. They look for business opportunities. Sometimes I feel like these are big two mountains, the pharma mountain and the medtech mountain. There's a lot of ego sometimes at the top of the mountain, and in the middle between these two mountains, like in nature, there's a valley, and I call this valley the valley of missed opportunities. There are a lot of really cool and innovative solutions that could really bring value to patients and help patients feel better that are end up in this valley because of lack of communication between these two worlds that are so different. I think we need to do a better job teaching medtech how to talk to pharma, teaching pharma how to work with medtech, so that that valley will only have some water stream and not miss opportunities.
Mm. Amir, thanks so much for your time and all the thoughts that you shared.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you.